Hello folks, did you know it's now possible to solo Mythic Igra and get your hands on Annulos Flames Guidance, this awesome owl mount? Well, in patch 12.05, the World of Warcraft dev team have done a pass over the Dragonflight raids to make sure that they are at least technically soloable, and that includes Igra. Now, if you're watching this video from the future after the Midnight expansion is over and done with, it will very likely be as easy as any other old legacy raid. But at the time I am uploading this video, soloing Mythic Igra, well, very possible, isn't exactly what I would call easy, with one boss in particular being pretty problematic, at least if you don't know how to deal with it. It's also worth keeping in mind that just like most old raid mounts, this is no longer a guaranteed drop. Blizzard don't generally share drop rates, but the majority of old raid mounts are around a 1% drop, and I think it's fairly reasonable to assume that this will be about the same. So let's dive in and see what it takes to do this raid. I did this run on an item level 280 protection paladin, which does mean that I have quite a bit less damage than most similar geared DPS would. That said, I have previously done most of the bosses at around level 270. And that's probably the minimum item level I would recommend for DPS and tanks. For healers, I currently recommend switching to a DPS specialization, though I am sure that by the end of the expansion you will be able to do it as a healer. When you first enter the raid, I do recommend picking up the Mythic Skip quest from Marithra, who will be just inside the entrance. This will require you to defeat the third last boss Smoulderon 3 times, and I'll cover how that skip works as we go. Do not bother with this other quest. That was for a hidden chance, which really isn't relevant in current content. As we make our way to the first boss, you will find 2 of these burning ancients, and you'll want to defeat the NPCs attacking them, and if you have any healing abilities, then heal them up. Doing this will cause them to grant you a significant and very useful speed buff to help you reach the various boss areas. The first boss, Grarlroot, really isn't hard, but it is probably one of the more annoying fights to do. It's simple enough at the start. You don't really need to avoid any of the mechanics, just keep attacking the boss and ignoring everything else until he reaches 100 energy, when these roots will spawn and the boss will get a massive damage reduction. Now, if you're watching from the future, you'll very likely be able to defeat him before you get to this point, but at least for the first couple of Midnight seasons, you are very likely going to have to deal with these annoying roots. What you need to do is to stand in these soak pools and then run next to the roots and set them on fire until you use up all of your fire stacks. Then you soak another pool and repeat. This does take quite a long time to do if you're solo. And to get each root to disappear, you do have to set every single section on fire. If a root is not disappearing, that means that you've missed a section and you'll need to track it down. When you do eventually get rid of all the roots, then you can heave a sigh of relief and finally defeat that boss. The second boss, Igra, is super easy. Just attack him and ignore all of the mechanics. There is an annoying knockback during the intermission where he just stands using his hammer. Moving out of these swirlies will allow you to avoid that knockback, but it's really not an issue if you do get hit. Now, once you manage to unlock that raid skip, this will allow you to skip the next 4 bosses and go straight to Smoulderon. To activate the skip, you need to go up to this central platform and click on this branch thing, after which you can click on the seed to open the way to Smoulderon. There are chapter headings down below if you want to skip the video right to Smoulderon now, but for now I'm going to take you through all of the other bosses, because if you don't have that skip, you are going to have to deal with them at least a few times. From here, the raid is divided into 2 wings, one to the left and one to the right. The right hand wing will take us to Council of Dreams, which is by far the most challenging boss to deal with. So I do suggest that you go that way first so that you don't waste a ton of time if you do end up getting stuck. The first thing that you need to do is to run around the area and click on every single one of these little fairy dragons to get rid of them, after which you will get turned into a duck for a few seconds. After this, just defeat the 2 bears and that will get the main bosses to turn up. Now, of these 3 bosses, the only one that you'll be able to move around the arena is the big bear Urtos. The other 2 will just jump around the area to their own devices and you can't really do anything about their positioning. This is a bit of a problem, as these bosses do need to die within 15 seconds of each other, and their health bars are not linked. What you basically need to do is to get all of the bosses down to around 10% health, although you may need to vary this target depending on your personal damage output. And once you get them to 10%, then you want to bust them all down as soon as possible. However, unless you stick to purely single target abilities, which for most specializations will cause the fight to take far too long, leading you to end up hitting that enrage, which can still one-shot you, then as you attack either Pip or Erwin, the bear will be taking damage as well, and I've found that it's very easy to accidentally kill the bear, while the other two are well above 50%. The end result of which is that the bear goes back to 100% health, causing the boss to enrage, and yet you take that one shot. To avoid this, what I personally do is keep the bear behind me at all times. This massively reduces the cleave damage that it takes. Even with this, the fight is still pretty annoying, as you'll also have to deal with periodically being turned into a duck. When that happens, what you need to do is to run through the green pools until your second action bar button becomes available, which you can then use to go back to normal. On top of all of that, you can also expect to be stunned for 10 seconds at a time several times. Once you get Pip and Erwin down to around 10%, what you then want to do is to pull the bear away from them and burn him down to 10% as well. Then you can just drag him over each of the other two as you very quickly defeat them. Keep in mind that once any of them dies, that 15-second timer starts, so time is of the essence as you burn them down. The next boss after that is Nymue. To get to her, what you want to do is to head up to the back of the boss area and jump into this updraft to port up to the new boss area. This boss is by comparison pretty easy to deal with. There are just two mechanics that you do need to worry about. The first mechanic you need to worry about is this big circle. This will drop a pool that will knock you back, and you don't want to surround the boss with these pools, as if you're melee you won't be able to get to her, so just run out, or in other words, don't be me in this fight. You also do need to watch out for these beams which form between the two glowing orbs. These will stun you when they hit you, and they're super annoying, so you want to avoid these as much as possible. When the boss gets shielded up, then you run out and defeat the two adds to unshield her. Don't worry about this big dome and the other adds up the back, you can very safely ignore them. Once the boss is defeated, head up to this area behind the boss and click in the bud. This is essential to unlock access to the last three bosses, but will also open up a shortcut port back to the other wing. By comparison to that right hand wing, the left hand wing is a piece of cake. For the first boss, Volcross, the main mechanic that you need to care about is this snake that slams down. Just look for its shadow and run out of it. This fight also has a group soak mechanic that if you're soloing, you will not be able to deal with at all. The end result of this is that the boss area is going to get completely covered in flames. Fortunately, the flames don't do much damage to you at level 90, so it's all good and you just keep attacking the boss. After this, you need to drop down to Larodar's boss area. Now, this boss did have a healing mechanic when it was current, but you can just ignore that these days. Just fight the boss away from the seed in the middle. He will eventually cover most of the floor in these burning pools, so don't really worry about avoiding them. Just stay on the boss until you defeat him. Afterwards, don't forget to click on that seed. Again, this is needed to get access to the next boss, and it will also unlock a handy port up at the back of the boss area. Okay, and now it's on to Smoulderon, which is where we'll be picking up if you have the raid skip. Just unlock the bridge by clicking on the seed and then head over. Now, these swirlies on the bridge do have a strong knockback, which can throw you completely off the bridge. So do try to avoid as much of them as you can and stay near the middle of the bridge and you should be fine. Smoulderon is again pretty easy. Just fight him and ignore most of the flame on the ground. After a little while, he will pour into the middle of the room and start to do a very long channel. When he does this, what you want to do is to look for these 5 burning orbs that spawn nearby and run through them. These will give you a huge stacking damage buff, which will massively speed up the fight. After Smoulderon is defeated, you want to click on the green dragon to head up to the next boss area and face off against Tindral Sageswift. Now, before you start this boss, you do need to know that it is a flying boss. So make sure that you have a flying mount on your bars ready for use at short notice. You'll also want to make sure that enemy nameplates are turned on. I will explain that shortly. Beyond that little bit of preparation, again, this fight is just beat up the boss and ignore the stuff on the ground until he takes off. When he does take off, look around for this feather and run through it. This will enable you to mount up, so quickly mount up and then look for the boss and follow him to his next platform. I find it's much easier to look for his nameplate as it does stand out against the background. You did enable those enemy nameplates, didn't you? As you fly over, you do want to avoid these red orbs as they will dismount you, but you can fly through the green ones for a damage buff. But that's really not very important, so don't take any risks at all. On the next platform, you want to burst the boss to break his shield, and then it's the same deal as platform 1. Fight him until he takes off, then run through the feather to mount up and follow him again. One thing to note is that the third and final platform is higher up, so you do need to be a little bit careful with your vigor management this time around, which I personally wasn't in this video, and that was pretty close. Once you're on that final platform, just kill him as soon as possible. Easy peasy. Once Tindral is down, you want to turn around and face Fyrakk and wait for him to open up this purple tear in the scenery. Mount up again and fly through that tear to arrive at the final boss area and face off against Fyrakk himself. This final boss fight is a 3-phase encounter with 2 intermissions. Now, if you previously tried and failed to defeat Fyrakk, the main problematic mechanics have been massively nerfed in patch 12.05, and it is now perfectly doable solo. For those of you who know the original mechanics, the healing adds now self-heal themselves, meaning that they're perfectly able to survive on their own for the most part. And Igra now loses her health at a massively reduced rate, meaning that you can do this fight successfully without any healing abilities at all. If you're new to the fight, the one thing you do need to know is that if any flame pools hit these roots up at the back of the area in phase 1, that still will wipe you. To avoid that on pool, we're going to fight Fyrakk in phase 1 very close to the edge, just next to these burning pools. Beyond that, it's super simple. Just attack him and don't get too distracted by all the mechanics that are going off around you. They really don't matter. Eventually, Fyrakk though will take off, and this will take you into the first intermission, which starts with a pretty hefty knockback, so run into the middle to avoid being thrown off the platform, and then go back to damaging the boss, and you can't just ignore all of the orbs at this stage until he takes off again, only to land in humanoid form, marking the start of phase 2. In this phase, if you do have any healing abilities, then you can drop a heal on these big trees that spawn, as this does make this part of the fight a little less tight damage wise, but if you can't, it really is still doable, so just stay on Fyrakk until he takes off again. Once he does take off, you want to avoid the black line and just attack the big guys that spawn until Fyrakk comes back down again. After he does a second black line and comes back down again, the next time he takes off, it's going to be into the second intermission. This time around, we're going to get winds trying to blow us off the platform, and these winds are pretty severe, so move to the back of the area and be ready to use a movement ability if you have one. Once we're into phase 3, it's now a simple DPS race to burn them down before they enrage, which can still take you out if you hit it. The only thing to be aware of is these knockback swirlies, so stay away from the edge of the platform and you'll be perfectly fine. And once Fyrakk is down, you can loot him for that sweet mount, or maybe not, but there's always next week, isn't there? And that's it when it comes to soloing Fyrakk. If you've any other advice or tips, then do let us all know in the comments down below. If you found this guide helpful, entertaining, or even just plain annoying, then let me know by hitting that like icon. And if you want to support my channel to grow and help me to make more of these videos, along with my other content, then hit that subscribe button right now before you forget. If you don't want to miss out whenever I release a new video, then as well as subscribing, you can follow me in social media for updates. My link's in the description below as well. I've also started streaming on Twitch on Wednesdays, Saturdays and Sundays, and you can find a link to my channel below. And I hope you'll be able to join me on my journey of exploration through midnight. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.